Have you ever felt there's something within you silently observing everything? A kind of invisible presence that doesn't think, doesn't speak, but knows. It's not your inner voice. It's not your reasoning. It's something deeper, older. Like a buried memory, not of facts, but of essence. Something that was never taught, but has always been there, waiting to be remembered. This presence doesn't show up when you're distracted. It emerges in moments of stillness, when you pause, breathe, and the outside world quiets down. Then it reveals itself, and in that moment, everything seems to make sense. It's as if time slows down just so you can realize there is a force looking through your eyes, and it knows a path your mind doesn't yet understand. The problem is, we grow up in a world that teaches us to doubt the invisible. If it can't be measured, weighed, or explained, then it's not real. But what if it's the other way around? What if the invisible is the root of everything that exists? What we can't see might be guiding us far more than what we can. And what happens when we start listening to what has no voice? Maybe this force never left you. It was just drowned out by the noise of routine, by beliefs you never chose to carry. It doesn't impose itself. It whispers, and if you're not paying attention, you'll mistake it for just another thought. But it's not a thought. It's pure presence, a state of awareness that has always been there, behind the mask, beyond names. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who is living this life behind your eyes? Who's there when you're not? Trying to be anyone? Maybe the real you has never been who you learned to be. Maybe this silent something is your secret power. And the curious thing is that it only begins to act when you stop trying to control everything. From a young age, we're trained to trust only what our eyes see and our hands can touch. We believe that reality is only what we can prove with numbers, formulas, or statistics. But is that really all there is? What if reality is like a mirror that only reflects what we believe exists? In that case, the world outside wouldn't be a neutral stage, but an echo of what we're vibrating on the inside. Quantum physics has already shown us that matter isn't as solid as it seems. At the core, everything is made of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Atoms are more empty space than substance. And the most impressive part, the behavior of particles changes when they're observed. Doesn't that sound like magic? But it's science. The presence of the observer alters what is observed. So why do we still live as if we're prisoners of the facts? Why do we still believe the world is happening to us instead of through us? The answer might be uncomfortable. Because we've forgotten how to trust the invisible. We forgot that we are active participants in this energetic dance. That every thought, emotion, or intention is like a note in a symphony that resonates through everything around us. Most people don't realize they're shaping their own experience every second. They react to what happens, but don't notice. They're influencing what happens, like someone asleep in a moving car who later wonders how they ended up where they did. But what if your consciousness is the steering wheel? What if the world is listening to you all the time, waiting for direction? Reality isn't a wall. It's a living, sensitive, moldable field. And it responds precisely to what you emit, not just with words, but with frequency. The big question is, what are you emitting without realizing it? And what if the key to transforming everything around you isn't in effort, but in how you perceive, feel, and believe? Imagine your mind is a movie projector, and your life is the screen. But unlike how it seems, you're not just watching. You're creating the movie, scene by scene, without noticing. With every repeated thought, every unquestioned belief, you're casting a spell. A silent enchantment shaping your day, your relationships, your decisions. And the scariest part? Most of these spells aren't even yours. They were cast when you were still a child, before you even knew what it meant to believe. They came in the phrases you heard, the looks you felt, the silences you interpreted. You're not good enough. Life is hard. Dreaming is dangerous. You didn't choose these ideas, but they entered, took root, and began to run your reality from behind the scenes. Like invisible commands you follow without knowing it. The subconscious is the true magician. It doesn't argue, doesn't question, doesn't interpret. It simply accepts. And everything you repeat with emotion, it records as truth. This means that with every emotionally charged thought, you're reinforcing a spell. Have you realized the kind of reality you've been conjuring every day? The magic isn't in the rituals. It's in what you feel to be non-negotiable. But here's the twist. If you can cast spells, you can also undo them. Every belief can be deprogrammed. Every internal narrative can be rewritten. You are not a prisoner of your mind. You are the enchanter. You just need to remember the power you forgot you had. And maybe, for the first time, observe your thoughts like someone watching a magic trick being exposed. Magic only works when you don't see the strings. What if each thought is an act of creation? What if you're constantly invoking realities through what you feel and believe? Maybe the most important question isn't, what do I want from life? But rather, what do I believe without realizing it? And that's creating all of this around me. Have you ever tried, even just for a moment, to observe who is doing the thinking inside you? Not the content of your thoughts, but the place they come from. Most people live without ever noticing there's a gap between what they are and what they think. They confuse themselves with the mind, as if they were the voice that narrates all day long. But who is listening to that voice? That's the crack where everything begins to open. When you realize you can look at your thoughts, instead of being swept away by them, something shifts. A space appears, a silence, a clarity that's almost frightening. It's like stepping out of the storm and suddenly seeing it from the outside. And in that moment, awareness awakens. It was always there, but you were too distracted to notice. Awareness doesn't need effort. It's the background, the stage, where thoughts enter and exit like actors. But we forget this. We spend our lives identifying with the roles, the lines, the emotions. We think we are the fear, the anger, the anxiety. But what if all of that is just activity in your mind and not your true self? Who would you be without the thoughts that haunt you? Some traditions call this the silent witness. Others, the observer self. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is the experience, being fully present without trying to change anything, just watching. And in some mysterious way, this simple act of seeing begins to dissolve old patterns. As if, by being seen, the thought loses the power it had. The spell breaks in the light of attention. Could it be that your true power lies precisely in that place that watches everything in silence? And what if this inner gaze is the spark that connects you to something much greater, something that can't be explained, but transforms everything when it's felt? What would happen if instead of trying to control your mind, you simply turned toward this space and stayed there? Einstein gave us the formula, E=mc². Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, one of the most famous equations in history. But have we truly understood what it really implies? If matter is just condensed energy, that means everything we call real is, at its core, a dance of vibrations, an invisible game that only takes form when it comes into contact with consciousness. If everything is energy, including you, then every thought, every emotion, every intention is also a vibrational wave. And what does that change? It changes everything. Because it means that what you feel, think, and imagine doesn't just stay inside you. That vibration projects outward, interacting with the field around you. And that field responds, like a liquid surface reacting to every stone you throw. Most people live as if their emotions were internal events without external consequences. But the universe works like a mirror, sensitive to frequencies. Your anger, your love, your guilt, your joy, all of these states emit energetic patterns, and those patterns create, not in a linear or immediate way, but they do create. It's no coincidence that ancient traditions always linked intention to magic, because deep down, they're the same thing. Magic isn't in the supernatural. It's in the ability to consciously interfere with the field of possibilities. It's in realizing that you're interacting with reality even when you think you're just feeling. Emotion is the paint, thought is the brush, and your awareness is the artist. What picture have you been painting lately? What has your energy been planting without you noticing? And what if this equation isn't just a scientific formula, but a spiritual key? What if understanding that energy is matter in motion is the same as realizing that your consciousness shapes the world around you? What if the magic you've always searched for outside is already happening right now in everything you feel? Fear is silent. It doesn't show up screaming. It settles in slowly, like a shadow stretching out before you notice it. Sometimes, it disguises itself as caution, logic, common sense, and that's when it wins. Because fear's real power isn't in what it stops you from doing, it's in what it prevents you from being. It shrinks your dreams, distorts your perception, and drains your life force without asking for permission. Have you noticed how exhausting fear is? How a single scary thought can suck your strength like an emotional black hole? This isn't just psychological, it's energetic. Every time you enter states of anxiety, guilt, or worry, your field weakens. Your physical body feels it. Your creativity fades. Your intuition goes quiet. And everything around you starts reflecting this internal collapse. The cruelest part is that many of these fears aren't even yours. They were inherited, passed down through glances, phrases, traumas, and silences that you absorbed without question. They're like mental viruses that settle into the system and keep running even after they're forgotten. They define the invisible limits of what you believe is possible. And the more you believe in those limits, the more real they become. But what if fear isn't an enemy, but a signal? A kind of alarm that goes off every time you're near expansion. Something inside you knows. Every time you face a fear, a new version of you is born. Maybe that's why fear shows up right before big transformations. Like a gatekeeper, it tests you. Are you ready to step through? Now imagine, what exists on the other side of the fear you avoid the most? What versions of yourself are waiting for that step? What if fear is just the mind's resistance trying to protect a comfort zone? Even if that zone is filled with pain? What would change if, instead of running, you started looking fear in the eye and asking, "What are you trying to show me?" Have you ever thought of someone, and minutes later that person messaged you? Have you noticed how certain events seem to happen at the exact moment you needed them? That's not coincidence, it's a response. The universe, though silent, is listening, and it doesn't hear what you say with words. It hears what you emit with energy. Its language is vibrational. Every emotion you feel, every thought that repeats, every desire that pulses, all of that is a frequency. And frequency, by definition, attracts what vibrates on the same level. It's not superstition, it's physics. Like a radio station, you only tune into what matches your signal. That's why the question isn't, why is this happening to me? But rather, what frequency is my reality reflecting? You might say you want peace, but if inside there's distrust, anguish, and resentment, the universe responds to that. It doesn't react to what you wish. It reacts to what you vibrate. There's no blame in this process, only precision. Energy is neutral. It simply organizes events around you according to what you carry within. The outer world, then, is not the cause. It's the consequence. And that's why changing your reality doesn't begin with action. It begins with presence. With an internal adjustment so subtle it seems insignificant at first. But soon, synchronicities increase. The right doors open, and the flow of life changes direction. That's not luck. It's alignment. It's the dance between your vibration and the field that responds flawlessly, like a quantum mirror. Have you asked yourself what the universe is trying to tell you right now? What if every delay, every repetition, every coincidence is a conversation? What if what you call life is actually a real-time energetic correspondence? Maybe the secret isn't controlling the world, but learning to hear the silent response of reality to who you're being. Since childhood, you were taught to think small, to compare yourself, to believe that only a few chosen ones have talent, luck, or worthiness. And you believed it. Slowly you shrank, you conformed, you gave up big dreams because of small fears. But what if all of that is a construct? What if this idea of a limited self is actually the greatest lie ever told, and the most successful one? Think about it. Your body is made of the same elements as the stars. Your brain produces electrical impulses faster than lightning. Your heart emits a magnetic field that can be felt meters away. None of this is symbolic. It's literal. And yet, you look in the mirror and doubt yourself. How can something so vast fit into such a small self-image? The truth is, you were programmed to forget who you are, by systems that profit from your low self-esteem, by cultures that reinforce obedience instead of freedom, by voices that repeated so many times that you can't, that you started acting as if it were true. But it's not. It never was. What we call limits are almost always mental borders, not real ones. You are not what they told you. You are what you haven't yet dared to be. And every time you feel the call for something greater, it's your true self knocking at the door. But out of fear, you retreat. You call it madness, irresponsibility, a fantasy, when in fact it might be the only sane gesture, remembering that you are more, and that within you is a power so great it still scares the conditioned mind. So, what's stopping you now? A belief? A phrase from the past? A mistake you haven't forgiven yourself for? What if all of that is just the shell? And what if, beneath the layers, there's still a version of you so free, so radiant, so bold, that the world isn't ready to see it? But what if that's exactly the version you were born to embody? There are moments when time seems to slow down. The world keeps moving, but something inside you stops. It's as if another dimension subtly opens without warning. It can happen in a moment of deep silence, in an intense connection with nature, in a dream so vivid it leaves traces when you wake, or even in that state when everything flows and you forget you exist. What are those moments, really? They are cracks in the rigidity of the self, slits through which a broader awareness escapes, one that's always present but almost never noticed. Some call it flow, trance, mystical insight. The names vary, but they all have one thing in common: the suspension of the logical, linear mind. When control steps aside, another intelligence takes over. One that doesn't think, it feels, doesn't analyze, it knows. In those states, you connect with something beyond the character you play every day. Intuition comes alive. Ideas emerge from nowhere. You act with precision without knowing why. It's not guessing, it's resonance. You enter a field where time bends, identity dissolves, and everything feels more real than reality itself. And when you return, something has shifted, as if you touched a truth impossible to put into words. But why does that matter? Because those states aren't exceptions, they're invitations. Reminders that far more awareness is available than what we use daily. The problem is that we've been taught to value only what is rational, measurable, logical. The invisible was discredited, and with it, the key to unlock a level of perception where the magic of reality becomes visible. Have you ever wondered why the ordinary mind fears silence so much? Why we flee deep presence as if it hides something dangerous? Maybe because in silence. The illusion of control disappears. And there, in the pause between thoughts, you meet yourself, not as a name or a story, but as pure awareness, ready to access something your mind still can't explain. Have you ever stopped to think that almost everything you do in your day, the way you wake up, react, speak, decide, doesn't come from conscious choices? Neuroscience estimates that over 90% of your actions are driven by the subconscious. In other words, the one guiding your life isn't the you who thinks you're in control, but a silent system of programs accumulated since your very beginning. The subconscious doesn't sleep, doesn't rest, and doesn't argue. It executes. Everything you've heard repeatedly, everything you felt intensely, everything you saw as truth was stored there. It operates like an invisible engineer, building the foundation of your reality based on past experiences, even the ones you've already forgotten. And that's exactly why changing your life requires more than good intentions. It's like trying to renovate a house by just changing the curtains. If the blueprint is still the same, nothing essential changes. While you consciously try to improve, the subconscious keeps transmitting the same old signals. Phrases like "I'm not enough," "It's going to go wrong," "That's not for me," keep echoing as silent commands. And the universe responds, always. But here's the detail that changes everything. The subconscious can be reprogrammed. It responds to emotional repetition. It responds to images, symbols, deep sensations. That's why rituals have power, why art moves us, why imagination is so powerful. Every visualization felt deeply, every affirmation embodied, every intense experience that challenges an old belief. All of it reshapes the system. Have you ever thought about what your subconscious believes to be true about you? What commands are recorded there that you never chose? And what if your current life is just a faithful reflection of those inner instructions? Maybe the question is no longer, what do I want to change? But rather, what part of me still believes I can't? Because that silent belief is the one deciding everything for you. There's something between you and everything you want. A space that seems empty but pulses with possibility. Call it the quantum field, collective unconscious universal mind. The names vary, but the essence is the same. There's an invisible fabric connecting you to all that exists. And this field isn't static. It responds, moves, reorganizes the visible world based on the invisible signals you emit. Every thought you have, every emotion you hold, every intention vibrating in your body, all of that interacts with this field. Not mystically, but naturally. Like waves crossing paths in water. Some reinforce each other, others cancel out. And in the end, the reality you experience is the result of these subtle interferences. What you feel in silence builds more than your words ever could. This field is intelligent. It mirrors. It doesn't judge. If you vibrate scarcity, it amplifies. If you vibrate gratitude, it amplifies. It doesn't ask if you deserve. It simply responds to what you energetically offer. That's beautiful and terrifying. Because it means the world isn't random, it's responsive. And your frequency isn't just a reflection of your life, it's the source. Some people spend their whole lives asking for signs, but the sign is already being given, in the coincidences that repeat, in the patterns that won't break, in the situations that come back like mirrors, insisting on showing you what you haven't yet seen. The field wants to show you what you're still unconsciously vibrating. It wants to remind you that everything is connected, including you. And what if that space between you and the world isn't a between, but a with? What if there's no real separation between what you feel and what happens? What changes in the way you live when you realize everything is responding to you? That maybe the silence between a choice and its consequence isn't empty, but a sacred interval where the invisible is conspiring, waiting for your next vibration? You were taught that everything worthwhile requires effort, that achieving something means fighting against all odds, enduring pain, accumulating battles. But what if that's only half the story? What if effort is a useful tool, but not the true engine of creation? The universe doesn't move through effort. It moves through attraction, through resonance, through magnetism. Nature doesn't force. It flows. Observe a magnet. It doesn't chase anything. It attracts. Why? Because there's a frequency that generates natural connection. And with you, it's the same. Your desires aren't far away. They're already in the field. And they draw closer according to what you vibrate, not how much you exhaust yourself. The more you enter the internal state of what you desire, the more aligned you become. And that alignment generates movement, silent yet unstoppable. This isn't passivity. It's presence. It's acting from coherence, not from lack. Because when you act without alignment, you get tired. But when you are fully present in what you do, time passes and you barely notice. The body cooperates, the mind clears, the world responds. That's when effort becomes expression, not survival. That's when you shift from running mode to creating mode. The problem is, we've been conditioned to doubt ease. When something comes easily, we think something must be wrong. When something flows, we feel guilty, as if suffering validated our worthiness. But that's a cultural lie. Life doesn't reward you for suffering. It responds to your vibration. Suffering is not noble. It's just a sign of misalignment. And no one is born to lose themselves trying to prove something to the world. What if everything you desire is already looking for you? What if the only thing stopping this meeting is the internal state of someone who still believes they have to run, sacrifice, hide? Maybe the secret isn't in doing more, but in being more aligned, more whole, more truthful. And in that being, discovering that magnetism isn't something you have. It's something you become. Reality, no matter how solid it seems, isn't a fixed block. It's a fluid mirror, a reflection of how you perceive. Every detail of the world around you, the people you meet, the challenges that arise, the opportunities that appear, all of it is adjusted, almost surgically, to the frequency of your perception. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. That's not just a beautiful idea. It's science. Quantum physics has already shown that the observer influences the phenomenon observed. That means the way you look at something changes what is being looked at. Consciousness shapes matter. But here's the most important point. This happens all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. Even when you're distracted, judging, waiting, you're creating. Perception works like an energetic lens. It filters, colors, gives form. If you see the world as a hostile place, your field contracts, your energy shuts down, and your reality responds accordingly. If you see the world with curiosity, openness, trust, the field reorganizes, new possibilities arise. Not because the world changed, but because the observer did. And the most remarkable thing is that this shift in perception doesn't require anything external to change. It begins with an inner gesture, an almost imperceptible adjustment. Choosing to see with different eyes, choosing to interpret things differently, choosing to feel differently. It sounds simple, and it is, but it takes presence. Because the conditioned mind will always try to pull you back to the old pattern, the familiar filter, the illusion of control. Now think, if reality responds to the way you see it, who do you become when you change your gaze? What new world begins to emerge when you tune your perception like someone dialing in a new frequency? And what if true transformation isn't about changing your life, but about changing the way you see the life you already have? Maybe the invisible has always been there, just waiting for you to finally see it.